Before we get started, I just want to let you know that we will be recording this session today, so I will start that. Oh, it looks like it's already going, so perfect. Well, again, welcome. Thank you for attending the event this afternoon. The Center for Career Development and Avanzamos are excited to host this event in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month. We're also excited for you to hear from three distinguished Marymount alumni about their professional experiences and accomplishments since earning their degrees at Marymount. Moderating our panel this afternoon is our student, Avril Aguedo, and she is going to be asking questions of our panelists. Avril is a sophomore student majoring in communications. She also serves as one of our office assistants in the Center for Career Development. We're excited to have her lead the panel, and she's going to do an excellent job. To start off today's panel, Avril will ask our panelists a series of questions pertaining to their professional experiences and how Marymount supported them in their professional journey. We'll leave some time at the end for our audience to ask questions of the panelists, so please feel free to ask your questions in the Q&A section of the webinar throughout the event, and we will share them with our panelists towards the end of the webinar. Now, it's my pleasure to turn the event over to Avril, who will introduce our panelists.
Thank you, Emily, for that warm welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. I am pleased to moderate this afternoon's panel and to facilitate a conversation with four distinguished Marymount alumni. Our first panelist name is Claudia Melara Chase. Claudia Melara Chase is an attorney at the law offices of Brian V. Everett in Fairfax, Virginia. She is born in El Salvador. Claudia was the first in her family to graduate from college. She earned her bachelor's degree in paralegal studies from Marymount University in 2000 and her Juris Doctor from University of Maryland School of Law in 2011. After completing a legal externship at the U.S. House of Representatives, Claudia was awarded a certificate of congressional recognition. Claudia has a passion for assisting marginalized immigrants. Using her bilingual and legal skills, she changes lives. In her career, she has worked with immigrant families facing foreclosure, worked with the Kids in Need of Defense organization representing children fleeing persecution, and continued to represent low-income clients without access to legal representation in her current role. Thank you so much, Claudia, for being here. Our next panelist is Thais Ribeiro. Thais Ribeiro is the Director of Operations at Chainbridge Bank in McLean, Virginia. Originally from Brazil, Thais has lived in the Northern Virginia area for the past 16 years. She graduated summa cum laude from Marymount University's honors program. After graduating from Marymount, Thais obtained her Certified Public Accountant certification and MBA. She is also a graduate of Virginia Bankers Association School of Bank Management. So thank you for joining us, Thais. And lastly, I am pleased to welcome Mira Vasquez to our panel. Mira was born in Bolivia and immigrated to the DMV area when she was only 6 years old. She acquired her BA in psychology from Marymount back in 2009. 8 years later, she acquired her master's in HR management with a 3.9 GPA. Mira has over 7 years of HR experience and has a deep love for her career. She has held various roles at the Hilton Corporate and is also currently an HR manager at Park Hotels and Resorts, a leading lodge and real estate investment trust. Throughout her HR career, she has made impactful changes in her organization, such as help develop and implement a new performance management system, managed and led implementation of a human resources information system, and most recently, developed a wellness program in order to provide additional support to employees during the pandemic. Welcome, Mira. As Emily mentioned, we will start the panel with a series of questions and then allow our audience to ask questions of the panelists. Audience member, please feel free to send your questions throughout the panel and we will discuss and answer them toward the end of our time together. So Claudia, let's have you answer the first question, and then Thais and Mira, feel free to jump in. Our first question is, What inspired you to choose the field you pursued? Did you always know that you were destined for the field?
I did not know. It has a lot to do with what you're exposed to growing up, and I was not exposed to the legal field. It happened to be by accident. But even before that, I took one of those tests that helps you develop, suggests careers for you. And I recall attorney coming up, and it said that I would have to read and write a lot. I thought, oh, that doesn't sound for me. I really thought it was unattainable, but again, it's through meeting different people and being introduced to that career and being around lawyers and finding out how they, their story of how they became attorneys really helped me pursue my career as an attorney.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure many Marymount students can relate to you. And just out of curiosity, did you ever have any moments of doubt when you were like finding what inspired you to find the field you pursued?
Yes, I did. And that's why I took baby steps. I first became a paraprofessional or paralegal through Marymount. And I did that. I had a successful career as a paralegal, and in doing that, the work as a paralegal, I got the courage up to apply to law school, and that's a whole thing in and of itself, which I can share with anyone that wants to learn more about that career path.
Thank you so much, Claudia, for sharing. Thais, what inspired you to choose the field you pursued? And did you always know that you were destined for the field?
Actually, I switched major several times while at Marymount. I wanted to pursue psychology because my aunt was in the psychology field, and then I changed my mind. I was really good at science, so I wanted to go into the science field. And I had a finance professor, and I really enjoyed his class. So I took more classes, and then I took accounting, and I was like, oh no, for sure I want to do accounting. And so I double majored. I did accounting and finance, but my goal was always accounting. And it was not easy, as not necessarily to play this card, but as a female, but as also a foreigner. Coming into that field, I was looking for internships, and it was just so hard, especially not being from the US. Certain, high level companies will require for you to have your citizenship or some sort of, I guess your citizenship, so you can apply for security clearance, can't speak. And that was really hard. I kept getting denied just for that factor alone. And so I got an internship in the finance field, and I was really happy with it. It's funny how, sometimes when it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And so I was glad that Miramont had allowed me to get, my double major, and facilitated that area of my career by requiring an internship. That's what really opened the door, and I've never left. I've been here for 7 years now.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'm sure, well, personally, me as a student, I can relate to your story and to what you just told us. And I'm also very grateful for Marymount's internship program, because I think many students can get a lot out of it. Did you have any moments of doubt while pursuing your whole career?
Yeah, it wasn't easy, especially when I kept getting turned down for these internships because of my status, not being a US citizen. So that was doubtful. Passing the CPA exam wasn't easy, so that was hard as well. And I was like, well, maybe I don't need it, but I've always, we'll talk about this later in the end. I always say that if you're going to do something, you're going to do it well. And so I spent all that time learning accounting. I might as well get my certification for it. So I encourage you guys, if you're going to spend your time doing something, definitely, do it to the fullest.
Thank you so much for sharing. Mira, you're up. What inspired you to choose the field you pursued? And did you always know that you were destined for that?
No, like everyone else on this panel, no. I actually wanted to be a lawyer when I was a little kid, but that changed. I was undecided for my first semester when I was in Marymount because I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew that I had to go to college because that's what was expected of me at that point. But then I ended up getting into psychology for my bachelor's because it was no real commitment. Psychology gave you the opportunity to venture to many other places. My advisor was like, you can get into criminal justice. You can even get into law if you want to, or HR or anything like that. And back then I had a lot of issues with commitment. So that was perfect because it gave me options. But I mean, I graduated with my undergrad in 2009. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do until I was 28. That's when I decided to get into HR. I looked into it, I fell in love with it, and then that's when I decided to get my master's in HR management at Marymount because it was at that time that I had a passion for it and I really wanted to learn it. And my experience, my undergrad versus my master's, it was completely different because I really had a passion for it. And even though I found my passion later on in life, it was just as valuable. And I think that don't be too hard on yourself if you still don't know what you want to do. I had doubts early on in my career what I wanted to do. But later on, when you know, you know. It's like finding that life partner. When you know, you know. And you just have to really have a passion for what you want to do in order for you to be successful in that role. Because if you don't, it's just going to be another day in the office. So definitely find a passion for what you want to do.
Thank you so much for sharing. Your words are really inspiring, and I'm sure many Marymount students or students watching right now can relate to what you're saying right now. So moving on to the next question, how did your education at Marymount University help you succeed professionally?
So funny story, I was supposed to transfer to Mason after my first semester in Marymount because life happened. And I remember driving to Mason to go to the admissions office. And then I was told you have to park in lot A and then walk to code blue or something like that. And I just made a U-turn because I fell in love with Marymount because of the small classrooms. I am not one student in a classroom of 200. Our maximum class that I had in my undergrad was like 35, 40 people at the most. Every professor knew my name. Every professor helped me with my development. I built really great relationships with students. I was a commuter. I didn't live on campus. So I had a different experience. But even then, that's what I really enjoyed about Marymount was the fact that it had small classes and you didn't have to walk miles to get to these classes. The other thing, that's why I came back for my master's program at Marymount, even though it was more expensive than other schools, I didn't really care because you really do pay for what you get and you really get that one-on-one with professors. I mean, I remember when I attended the open house for the master's program, and the dean said something that I will never forget. And I always tell these to upcoming students, any of my peers that haven't gone to school yet, if you ever lose your job, you lose money, you lose your house, you lose your car, but nobody ever takes your degree, even when it's not even paid for yet. And a lot of people fear that student loans, this and that. Obama didn't finish paying his student loans until his second term as president. So if he can do it, you can do it. So that's my advice, is that definitely don't let that be a deter for you not to get, your degree or pursue that certification, and find a school that really does meet your needs. Some people can succeed in larger classrooms. I personally love attention, so I need attention from my professor.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I agree with you. I chose Merrimont also for the small classrooms and the personalized attention, as you say.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing your story. Thais, how has Merrimont helped you succeed professionally?
So I touched on this a little earlier, that Miramont required an internship in order to graduate. I interned at a bank for my fall semester senior year, and I was still set on interning at an accounting firm. The bank was like, no, come back for your spring semester. It's like, okay, I'll do accounting in the summer. And my professors were so connected to the community. So that's a nice thing. Like your professors really get to know you, and they're part of the community. So they get to know the business leaders. And my professors had put in such a good word for me at to stay at this, well, to get my foot in the door, really. But then being here, and Marymount does set students up for success. We're not showing up like other students, and not to say that, but lightly, but we're professional. We're prepared to be entering a professional environment. And so that already set, the bar a little higher. And then the education that you receive and the support, if you have any questions, you can go back to your professors. You're accessible. They really do push you to go outside of the books and really learn about the industry. So that was, a leg up that I had on other interns. And that was what allowed me to get a full-time position where I'm currently at. And they've remained a resource. It's so nice that your professors still catch up with you and still try to see what you're up to and keep in touch. So Miramont was for sure the biggest driver to my current success professionally.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. As I said before, Marymount's internship program is really, really good. And I really encourage students watching right now to look more into it, because it actually helps you graduate with a job already or with a lot of options. So I think that your point is very, very valid. Carlos Benavides just joined. He's another one of our panelists. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce him. Carlos graduated from Marymount University in 2009 with a Bachelor of Arts in English, and later went on to attend St. Mary's University School of Law, where he earned a Juris Doctorate in 2013. In 2020, he joined iCart Law PC after serving as an assistant district attorney for Hidalgo County, Texas. At the district attorney's office, Carlos served as a prosecutor in both County Court at Law No. 1 and at the 389th District Court for several years. At the same time, Carlos maintained a private law firm practicing in civil matters related to fiduciary and transactional law, and he often served as a court-appointed guardian ad litem in personal injury and family law cases. Some of the work that Carlos has gone to focus on include creating a domestic violence specialty court in South Texas, labor trafficking, and serving a 6-year term in the Specialty Courts Advisory Council. He also attended the University of Texas School of Law's mediation program at the Center for Public Policy Dispute Resolution, and is now qualified to serve as a mediator in both court-ordered and voluntary mediations. So thank you so much for joining us, Carlos. And if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and ask you some questions. So we were talking about what inspired us to pursue the field that you got from Merrimount. Did you always know that you were destined for that field?
Sorry, by the way, for my tardiness. My secretary had put this in. We're on Central Time here in Texas, and she put it for 4 p.m. and I was in a meeting, and so she didn't think to disturb me. So I apologize to everybody for my tardiness and appreciate your all's patience. And thank you for that introduction. My career and whether it was Hispanic guilt and Catholic upbringing, being the oldest of 5 kids. Anybody here who's Hispanic and the oldest knows that your parents expect you to be the third parent and responsible for 1,000 different things. Where I wanted to go to art school, and my third brother got to go to art school. And when I asked my dad the difference, he was like, well, I want him to be happy with his life. You needed to take care of your brothers. So, I don't know if that's the long and short of it, but I mean, that's how I ended up. I'm okay emotionally, I think. Through therapy, everything's okay. But that's how I ended up where I am.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. How did your education at Marymount University help you succeed professionally?
Well, I mean, I go back to this all the time, and the administration needs to understand Marymount itself, I don't think is what makes Marymount are the professors. If it wasn't for the professors, Marymount wouldn't be what it is. And I don't think that students would come out of there any better or worse. I think the professors are really the heartblood of the university. And for me, it was really incredible professors that saw potential in me, that pushed me to be better than I thought possible. And I think if anything has stayed with me, you know, I don't have the, like, if you think of the University of Texas, everybody thinks University of Texas rah rah spirit. To me, it's more about people, professors that became part of my family. I mean, they'll be with me for the rest of my life. So that's what inspired me, or that I took from Marymount, were the professors. So they should treat them well, because if they're gone, I'll go with the professors.
Of course. Thank you so much for sharing your point of view. I'm sure every one of us agrees that professors here are so sweet and so good to us. And they're also part of why we are who we are once we graduate. So Claudia, how did your education at Marymount help you succeed professionally?
Well, it certainly gave me confidence, the confidence to go straight out into my paralegal career. I was a commuter student, already worked at a law firm. So the small classrooms, the professors really helped me stay connected to the school while I was there. The paralegal studies program, which is I don't believe is a program within Marymount any longer, was within the business school. And I think the business school did a great job of preparing me with courses that I would have been introduced to, and it definitely wasn't introduced to in law school, like finance, accounting, human resources, organizational behavior, math. But then, you know, Marymount was also a stepping stone. Because of my success at Marymount, I was able to and had the confidence to apply to law school and succeed in completing that, because it feels like it's never going to end. And then even when it ends, you still have to take a bar exam. And if you want to practice in another state, you have to take another bar exam. So it's it definitely helped me succeed. And I agree with Carlos about the professors, and with Mira about the small classrooms. I think that was super good, interesting point.
Thank you so much for answering. So my next question for you is, a lot of industries lack equal Latinx representation. Do you think this is something being actively improved in your industry?
I think it depends on what state you're in. So when I worked in New Jersey, I thought that their Latino Lawyers Association was thriving, and there were a lot more Latino partners at law firms. I also saw that. I went to school in Maryland, so I'm familiar with their Latino bar, Hispanic Bar Association there. It was thriving, and there's nothing even remotely close to that in Virginia. I would say that Virginia is a little bit behind in that. And I can tell you, I went to a court hearing the other day, and I did not see any other Latino attorneys in the room.
Yeah. Mira, I see you nodding. Do you think that there's like industries that lack equal Latinx representation? And do you think this is something that needs to be improved in your industry?
So we're in the hotel business. So like to Claudia's point, it really does depend on the state. When I go to California, there is definitely a lot of support for the Hispanic community. There's a lot of laws that protect Hispanic employees and everything. So it definitely depends on the state. Going back a little bit, I have noticed how it has changed, because when I was an undergrad, there was not so many events like these. You didn't see a lot of leaders that look like you talking to you about their careers. And now there has been so much more done recently too, because of the climate that we're in. But I think that we fail to realize, and from the HR perspective, it's not just about publishing a job and only interviewing Hispanic employees. It's about educating your organization. So what we do is, for example, in my current organization, we do have a diversity and inclusion program, or committee, I should say. So we work around really developing initiatives around that. So we ensure that our search forms are providing at least 50% resumes of candidates with different backgrounds. We also hold unconscious bias trainings every day, non-discrimination trainings. I'm sorry, not every day, every year. That would be boring every day. Every year we have a compliance June, and we fill our employees with trainings about discrimination, about unconscious bias. And I think it's very important to educate your employees and your leaders, because you're letting those people know, hey, this is an issue. It might not be an issue to you, but it is a current issue. Last year, because of the current climate that we were in, I started drafting social and cultural newsletters that we provided to everyone in our organization. And they are events that represent all cultures and backgrounds, just to create tolerance, empathy, and awareness. Because I might not know what the Jewish community is celebrating, or what the African community is celebrating, and just being able to learn and provide employees with that information, because they're not going to look for it on their own. It's important for us to really, from HR perspective, to provide that knowledge and education to our leaders and current employees to foster that inclusivity.
Thank you so much for your participation. Your points are very, very interesting, and I agree with you. We are the future of this world, and we have to educate our next generation. So thank you so much for your participation. Thais, how do you feel about equal Latinx representation? Do you think this is something that needs to be improved in your industry?
Yeah, so in the finance field, or in banking specifically, it's, historically is a predominantly white male field. And so just by being a leader, by leading by example and showing that you're a valued employee or a valued leader, I think that has really opened up. The cultural trainings, those are very helpful. And I think that's more recent now. We're seeing a lot of those, as Mira pointed out, unconscious bias training. That, to me, I've only heard about that for the past, maybe 2 years now. So it's very, very recent. And so that's really nice that they were doing that. But previously, just by being yourself and by having a good, by being really the label or the brand of your community, and by representing your community that way, I think that's the way that we can make a change and show, hey, we're a force to be reckoned with, that's for sure. And that warms people up. I mean, a lot of people did not have, exposure to a Latina female, especially in a leadership position in the banking industry. And still, it's sad that I hear Claudia talking about going to courtroom and just, that lack of representation. But I was just down in a banking conference, and it's still, predominantly not, culturally diverse as we were expecting to be, or like we're real communities nowadays. So it's important that as students, you're going into the real world and you're representing as well.
Thank you so much. I completely agree with you. I think it's important for us, not only Latinx students, but also women, to learn and grow up, and also learn what we can do. So I think I agree with your point. Carlos, how do you feel about Latinx representation?
Well, I mean, I think it's dependent on where you're at. I think Claudia said previously, here in Texas, there's a lot of representation by Hispanics and Latinos and Latinas. I think, one thing that we have to be conscious of among, as those that identify as Hispanic or otherwise, is that with this Latinx, we need to not let others think that they can lump all Latin Americans into one category, because we're vastly different. I mean, Venezuelans, Bolivians, just because we speak a shared language doesn't mean we share all ideals or or that, common generalities that are associated to most of those that would associate as Mexican American transfer across the board. And I think we're in danger of that occurring more and more in this country when we're lumped, not because there's anything negative about us being lumped together, but because it then puts the onus of all of us as being identical, which we're not. And then we should celebrate the diversity that exists amongst us, even as Latinos or Latinas or Latinx, or however or Hispanics, from Spain. I mean, however we're going to identify. But I do think what there needs to be more representation of is females in positions of authority, which we're improving here in Texas with more female judges and other female leadership throughout. But I do think it is still something that is underrepresented and that needs to increase. And I think that I think somebody here mentioned when we were in school, you wouldn't see these types of panels. And I think of my partner, she was a science teacher, head of the science department at 25, and she went to a panel like this where there were 4 minority females talking about leaders in STEM research fields and in robotics and other things, about how when they had started their second careers, returning to university or what have you, and it made her as a Hispanic woman realize that she still had so much more potential and could go so much further. Already at 25, she was thinking, I'm already behind, or I'm already set on this path, or I can't break further ceilings than those I've already accomplished. And yet by seeing this, she came back from this science fair really invigorated. And so I think it's important for strong minority women to not discount their own value in the impact that they can have in other Hispanic or other minority women just by virtue of talking, and other women seeing this and going, you know what, okay, she started at 32 or she started this or whatever. And look at where she is right now. My life's not over at 26 because I chose one career path and that's it. And I can't alter my course or I'm too behind the game. And I think that's unfortunate because society is imposing so many additional burdens upon women that women are thinking in terms of a timetable so much more so than men are, where literally if we're unhappy at 30, we're like, big deal. I'm just going to change it. I'm going to flip the script and do this whole other thing. And I think that's something that especially women of this new generation need to band together, because even your parents are putting these sexist pressures on you that are then contorting the way that you think about how much time you have. Not all women, obviously. I don't want to make a generalization, but at least in this personal experience of mine, I noticed that there were a lot of pressures, and that the sisterhood she had with other females really empowered her to feel like she could still pursue her own career and not be less of a responsible adult woman. So I would like to see more Hispanic representation in females throughout all leadership industry.
Thank you so much for your words. As a woman and part of the Latinx community, I think your words are very inspirational for not only me, but for other girls that are joined right now in the panel. So thank you so much. Mira, do you have anything else you would like to share? I see you commenting.
I think that was amazing, Carlos. Thank you so much for not only being male and saying those things, but bringing awareness to that. That is very true. As Latino women, we're always giving a biological clock as well. By this age, you should be expected to have children. And I fought against that with my family forever. And I constantly educate them that, that's not the way to go. And it's a learning process. I think we all just have to be really vocal about these things like Carlos is being, and really share that with our children, with the children in our family, to educate them to be more tolerant and not really put an expectation on a Latina woman just because of what history has shown us.
Thank you so much for your points. What do you think you are doing or have done to help provide opportunities for rising Latinx leaders?
Oh, I'm sorry, who was the question for? I apologize.
Sorry for you, Mira, I'm so sorry.
Oh, okay, no worries, I wasn't sure. So like I mentioned before, I think that it's very important to start at home. Even if it's this mustard seed. Something that I do with my nieces and nephews since they were really little is talk to them about their career path and say, what are you trying to do? Because that's my generation, right? My next following generation. I want to provide support there. I also use my social media platforms to offer help with resumes, to offer help with really talking about what do you want to do with your life, and provide that support to my peers. Again, it's important to do that within your communities, because you don't have to go on a big platform and share your knowledge. You can do it at home. You can do it with not even just kids, of people that are lost, that might have chosen the wrong field. And I think that that's why we went to school. That's why we went to Marymount, to gain this knowledge and provide what we paid for to other people that are in need. So I think it's very important to just start at home and live by your word to the communities as well, around you, and be supportive of that.
Thank you so much for saying your kind words. I think you are absolutely right. Social media, it's a great tool to share and to help other Latinx people, and not only Latinx people, but other students in need of education and help.
Yep.
So thank you so much for your points. Claudia, I'm so sorry for interrupting you earlier.
No, I interrupted. I wasn't sure if I heard my name or not.
Great. What do you think you are doing or have done to help provide opportunities for rising Latinx leaders?
Well, as you know, I worked for a congresswoman as an internship, which I think that was a great experience. It made me decide that I did not want to enter the political arena. So that was good to learn. But also the way that I encourage or provide opportunities for individuals is that I personally involved in initiatives to naturalize individuals so they can and encourage civic leadership. I also, let's say, I help individuals with with DACA applications and other immigration benefits, just so they can attend school. Because how much further can you go without an education, especially if you want to study? That shouldn't be a barrier. So those are the things that I contribute to my society.
Thank you so much. And those are amazing things for you to contribute to our society. So thank you so much.
If I could just speak to that for a second.
Yeah, of course.
I just wanted to say, to the students listening, at least, because you will get into your field with the intent to change your field or to revolutionize your field. And you may come to a point where you feel you've hit a wall, or you're not changing the systematic underpinnings of the entire structure itself. And I think it's a very important lesson to learn as soon as possible that your inability to change that doesn't mean that you haven't had a resounding effect around you. Like what Claudia was saying, as my time as a prosecutor, every single person that I helped, I knew that there were 30 people in their lives that were being affected or helped. I knew that there were ripples that were going out. And Claudia's changing the path for many people's lives. And those paths may lead to changing other paths, and so on and so forth. And so while maybe Claudia hasn't changed the entire defunct immigration system, she's worked within the confines of that system to assist many people that will go on to help other people. And so when you get into your industry, don't become defeated. Don't become depressed that you haven't perhaps made the strides you want. Focus on what you've controlled around you and how the good acts that you've done and the people you've helped will ripple out further and further and further. And that's an important point to lifting up other minority people when we're talking about, that's how you do it, one person at a time, one day at a time, in whatever capacity you can do it in.
Thank you, Carlos. Do you have anything that you want to share that you have done or are doing to help provide opportunities for rising Latinx students?
Yeah, I don't know specifically what I could think of. I'm on the board of directors of the Texas Book Festival, and one of the things that I'm trying to see is more promotion of Hispanic and Latino and Latina readership, and also getting more of our minority students and all students. I really don't care about whether they're minority or not. I want all students to be better readers and more avid readers, because I genuinely believe that the only way we'll create the future we want is if we have greater readership. Because the beautiful thing about reading and readership is that you begin to empathize with people in other situations. You begin to understand how perhaps somebody who grows up with certain biases thinks a particular way or sees the world a certain way. And that then helps you make better connections. And I'm sure everybody on this panel would agree, because they all work in industries where they have to deal with other human beings, that if you don't figure out how to connect with other human beings, you won't be successful. And you're going to come across people you dislike, and you're going to come across people that are obnoxious. And, you know, you'll have some confrontations, like I'm sure all of us have had. I've definitely had, where later I think that wasn't instructive, and now I've just further solidified or cemented that person's opinions of Hispanics, or of whatever the case may be, of whatever the argument was. Maybe if I'd been more patient or tried to understand where they were coming from, I could have bridged that. Maybe we could have got into a place of compromise where we both agreed. And so you just, that's why I dislike the idea of safe spaces in universities, because there are no safe spaces in the workplace. I mean, obviously there's issues with Me Too that we need to address, but I'm talking about safe space in terms of conversation. I mean, you're going to deal with confrontation, and you need to learn how to deal with it as quickly as possible, because it'll be the impediment to you. And so I think in terms of lifting up others, I've tried to ensure that more minority students are reading, and I can't stress that enough. We need to put, and not books that they don't want to read. We need to put books that they're interested in reading in their hands first, and then teach them the classics. Nobody picks up Shakespeare and says, I love reading now. And you know, I mean, Shakespeare wasn't even intended to be read. And so we need to put books that the Harry Potters and that sort of thing in kids' hands, and really, I think then we'll have the sort of reflective country that we want, that's more empathetic.
Thank you so much for your points. As a person who is from a third world country, Honduras, I'm sure some of you know where that is, I can agree with your point of how important it is to teach children, not only Latinx children, but all children, the importance of reading and writing and going to school. Because I think there are many, many countries that struggle with that, and that kids don't have the opportunity to go to school. So thank you so much for sharing your experience. Guys, what are some things that you are doing or have done to help opportunities for rising Latinx students?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Ava. I'm actually gonna reply to Carlos. He said two things, three actually, that are really good. You know, he hit the nail in the head about a couple items, especially, you know, agree and disagree, and being able to have that conversation, because that's what really the real world is. You're not going to see somebody's point of view. Like he's talking about Shakespeare. I'm like, I love Shakespeare. I've read everything, the classics, you know, don't get rid of them yet. So I enjoy that, but it's, you know, being able to agree and disagree, being able to, you know, do the little things. You know, it's, you know, when we are thinking about these questions, what have I done? You immediately think big pictures, you know, what is it that I'm doing to change the field, what I'm changing the world. And I think he has it, you know, the right point. And I think both Claudia and Mira hit that, you know, the little things that we're doing on a day-to-day had such a big impact. So I'm going to revise my answer to that question. Little things day to day that are shaping the industry or helping out a fellow Latin future leader. I think that the way I'm helping out the industry in that way and bringing more diversity through our internship program, I do take a point to mentor or interns as they come through. That's a big deal for me. That's how I started. And sometimes students will come in and they'll kind of blow an opportunity really just by not seeing the potential that specific, you know, even if it's a little job, even if all you're doing is scanning paper, it's your attitude of how you do that task, of how you go about looking for bigger opportunities, bigger tasks that really sets you up for your future. So I think that the mentorship that way. Another way that I think that, you know, I encourage everybody on this panel as well. Carlos is talking about reading. Reading is so important. Financial literacy, I think that's a part that the Latin community really falls behind in general, whether it's our grandparents or parents or our generation or the younger generation that comes after us, is being prepared, financially secure, knowing the opportunities that you have, and for retirement or just for life in general. I think that's something that we could all be better in.
Thank you so much for your points. And as you say, things that might seem little to us right now are things that are big, big in the future. So thank you so much for your answer. I have another question for you. When you started in your industry, what were some barriers that you faced? Do you face some barriers today?
Yeah, so now not as much, because I think I've established myself. So in my current company, I think it's easier, but it's, I'm 28, just throwing that out there. I'm 28, I'm a female director of operations. When I go to these conferences, they expect me, when I say I'm in banking, oh, you're a teller. Oh, are you, a personal banker? They just expect you to be at an entry level. And so as young professionals, we tend to rise up a lot quicker than the current employees, just because, one, thank goodness for our education. But two, we're not afraid to go for it. And, technology has given us an advantage over the current employees. So don't be afraid of, taking on bigger opportunities. I think that's the challenge, that, if you're not changing with the technology, you're staying behind, but also be humble. I think that's the biggest thing. You could be the greatest thing since sliced bread, but if you're not humble about it, that's not going to get you anywhere.
Thank you so much for your words. I think you're very wise and very right, so thank you. Mira, when you started in your industry, what were some barriers that you faced, and do you face the same barriers today?
So I think being a Latina, a woman and a minority, you're gonna face barriers. We just have to really accept that. We have to work harder than the person next to us. And the sooner you accept that and you use it as your superpower, the better off you're gonna be. When I started off with one of my industries, I'm not gonna name companies here, but I was the only Hispanic in a team of all white women. I was given the jobs that nobody wanted to do. I worked longer hours, but didn't get the recognition that I deserved. And I didn't pop off on anyone. I didn't do that, because you have to use your emotional intelligence when it comes to that. Because one of the biggest tips that I give everyone is never burn any bridges, and never take things personal, because what they do to you says more about them than it says about you. And you always want to leave a company with your head held high, not because you lost it and went off on someone, because that's not going to take you anywhere. We as Latinos, we're already labeled as hot-headed sometimes, and we don't want to support that stereotype, right? So let's fight with our words and our actions of being professional and and taking the high road. That was earlier in my career, but that wasn't the last time. A few years ago, a senior leader in my company made a stereotypical joke towards me about my immigration status. And I couldn't believe it. I was in shock, because at that point in my career, I couldn't believe that I was like, I just couldn't believe it. It took me a couple of hours to really take it in. And then I got angry. I got so upset, but I didn't really let it get to me to go to that person. I went to the head of HR of my company, and I didn't go to vent. I went to say, this is unacceptable and I would like an apology. So I could have just said, you know what, I'm not going to make this a big a deal. He was just kidding. But again, we have to educate our leaders too. We have to educate our peers and those around us that it's not always funny and it's not always appropriate, because it is offensive, right? We have to be careful in the workplace. People think that because we're adults, some folks become adults faster. That's not necessarily the case. Sometimes we still deal with high school stuff that we shouldn't be dealing with, but that's just life. And the way that you act on it is going to say more about you than if you really take the low road and try to get emotional or even lash out. That's not the right road to take. So I leave you with this, students, like, we are minorities. We're going to battle these battles. And the best advice that I can give you is just use your emotional intelligence and try to rise above the circumstances or the situations that you're placed in.
Thank you so much, and I agree with you. Sometimes I feel that we are scared to embrace our culture, and because of the stereotype that Latinos have, and we're ostracized a lot of the time. But I think you're absolutely right. We have to educate our leaders to respect us, and we also have to demand the respect ourselves. So I thank you so much for your words. Claudia, what do you think? Have you faced any barriers when you started in your industry, or do you face any barriers today?
Yes, yes, absolutely. But I do want to touch on something that Mira said, and it's unfortunate that someone said that to you at work, and I'm not advising anyone on when to go to HR or not, but do remember that when you start working for these large companies, HR works for the company. They don't work for you. So, think carefully before you go to HR about issues that you'll encounter in your professional life, whether it's worth going to HR or not, because really something goes into your file as well. It's like making a claim on an insurance claim, even though it's somebody else that hit you, it's still a claim that you made and it goes in your file. So, but I'll leave that. I also want to touch on something that Thea said about financial preparedness. I think that's important because that was actually one of my barriers. As Marymount being Virginia's first Hispanic serving institution, I hope that they're doing more to handhold our Latino, Hispanic, Latinx students along this healthy financial path, because I did not enjoy having student loans to pay off. And I think I could have done it better. So that was one of my barriers. So I had to work full time and attend school at night in order to reach my goal. And yes, to your point, Mita, I had to work twice as hard as other people. The other thing that was a barrier for me was the lack of examples and mentoring that I had. My parents didn't study here. My mom didn't even graduate high school back in home country. So they couldn't guide me. They couldn't help me. I had to figure it out. So I had to find my own sources for learning on how to get that goal. And you're not going to find it all at Marymount, so make those connections. Back when I was at Marymount, we didn't have LinkedIn, but it's around now, and I advise you to start using it. Thea's already sent me a LinkedIn connection, so we'll stay in touch here now. And these are the things that you need to do. And I have had people reach out to me and just interview me and find out all the steps that I took and what I did to get there. Those are the students that are going to get there, because they're trying to figure out how it works, because they don't have that in their circle, in their family, as examples, immediate examples of how to reach that goal.
Thank you so much for your important points. I'm sure a lot of students can take notes of what you have said. So thank you so much for sharing and commenting on others panelists' comments.
April, I actually want to say something really quick, just to clarify. With HR, we do get a bad rep, unfortunately. And each organization, because I've had bad HR departments, each organization is different. Some organizations have a more futuristic business partner relationship with HR. And there are other organizations that are more old school. However, you have to make sure that you know where you stand with that. So HR can be your ally when it comes to situations that you cannot handle. But to Claudia's point, you also have to be careful, because you don't want it to be used against you. So it's kind of, there's no black or white when it comes to that. So my advice to you is just to be very aware of where your HR department is in your organization. Is it a partner, or is it just an administrative component of the organization? Because again, we do get a bad rep, and it's unfortunate. I have to defend HR all the time. And it just comes with the territory. But I really hope that with the years we can see improvement. And I have seen a lot of improvement in HR in different organizations, but always protect yourself by documenting things and making sure that you're using the correct words and you don't, use words that are going to come and haunt you in the future. Just want to leave you guys with that.
Thank you so much. Those are some excellent tips that I am sure I'm going to take into consideration, and many other students will too.
Oh,
Carla,
I did want to add one more thing, because you asked if I continue to face barriers. And yes, I have. So for example, I worked in an all male firm. So I was the only female, and I, maybe got the client work that none of the other attorneys wanted to do, or so I was assigned, work that others wouldn't do, and the attorneys that had, same amount of experience were given more opportunities to, let's say, go out on depositions or do different things that I wasn't given, and I had to ask for it. So that is a current barrier now that I got through my initial barriers. You're gonna continue to experience barriers throughout your career.
thank you so much of what you say right now. You're creating a path for future Latinas who want to be in your place. So thank you so much for what you're doing right now and for your comments. Carlos, what are some barriers that you faced when you started working in your industry, and what are some barriers that you face today?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be pretentious to say there are barriers for me. I mean, I think that, you're already ahead of the 8 ball as a male, and obviously I'm very light complected. So I have not experienced the same sort of barriers that perhaps some of my darker skinned cousins have. I think if I've experienced any barriers, it's been with my own communities. But that's my entire life. I've never been Hispanic enough. And I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a bar and had a bunch of people talking about me until I started speaking in Spanish. And then they were like, oh my God, what is he? And so and the barriers that I have faced, I think, are trivial compared to those my female colleagues have. I was thinking one sort of pseudo barrier that women have been dealing with for about 8,000 years that men have just come around to is when I was a prosecutor meeting with criminal defense attorneys, women. This was at the height of Me Too, when Me Too had just broken, and as men, many were uncomfortable about meeting alone with their female colleagues on the opposite side of the bench, of the other side of the desk, and I think you really have to go with your gut on those types of things, which women have had to be doing forever. What I think is funny is that some men may look at it as a barrier, but it's an eye-opening experience to what women have had to go through in the workplace for time immemorial. And there was one particular instance where I wasn't comfortable, and I had a female colleague meet with us, and that was the time that I was reported on as that I was confrontational or intimidating in some way. And sure enough, that I was called in by my superior, and they said, but it's okay, we know that nothing happened and this and that, and we've always trusted you. Then later, the female colleague, my coworker, came up to me and said, hey, did they talk to you? They spoke to me first. And I was like, well, they said they didn't need to talk to anybody. They knew me, but that wasn't the case. Thank God the female coworker was in there with me, and the female coworker, of course, said that defense attorney was really ridiculous and that I acted completely professional. But that's something that both men and women need to be conscious of in the workplace, is just go with your gut. When something doesn't feel right, don't engage it. The other thing I was going to say, and I don't want to appropriate from the female panelists, but one thing that I've seen, and it's anecdotal, but my co-prosecutor, normally when you're a prosecutor, there are 2 prosecutors to every courtroom. And my female co-prosecutor was a very senior prosecutor, probably had 7 or 8 years more experience than me. And one day we were talking about salaries, and we were maybe making $10,000 difference or $8,000 difference with all her experience. And she said, well, how are you making that much after 2.5 years or 3 years, however long I'd been there? And I said, well, what do you mean? I mean, I went in there and I demanded what I wanted. I mean, I went in and I said, this is what I'm worth and this is what I want. You don't want to pay me, that's fine. Like Mira says, I don't think you throw an outburst, but you say, this is what I feel I'm deserving of. And if you don't feel that way, I'm going to go elsewhere. And my colleague was like, you can't just go in there and do that sort of thing. And I was like, what are you talking about? Of course you can. And it happened with my partner as well, where she didn't feel like it was appropriate to ask for a rate, the students, and what if, it affected the students, and she didn't want anything to affect her students. And I don't know if it's a female mentality or if it's particular to these two experiences and not to any others, but I do think there's more of a mentality that, hey, we're all in this together. Whereas myself, I was like, I'm giving my blood, sweat, and tears. I want to get paid what I'm worth. I'm going to get paid what I'm worth. And if they don't want to, I'll walk. And I think that, to any female students that are watching, don't be afraid and don't devalue yourself. You're worth a certain amount of money as time goes on and on and on, and demand that. And don't be afraid that you won't find other opportunities out there, because you will. I mean, I think a huge barrier that's going to continue to grow for other people is not knowing Spanish. Use your Spanish, celebrate your Spanish. You're speaking Spanish ups your value tenfold. I mean, I'd pay Claudia more money as a paralegal because she can speak Spanish than I wouldn't hire a paralegal in Texas that can't speak Spanish. I mean, that's half the battle. They can't talk to half of our clients. I mean, what are you talking about? And it's becoming more and more of a norm. And so celebrate that and recognize that, just like the idea of speaking Spanish is something that you may think holds no value, that in and of itself can get you a raise. I mean, so just be aware that all these different things are good for you. And be conscientious of them as you go forward in your profession. And I think one other important thing to avoiding barriers, whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, working with HR, wherever you are, like when I became a lawyer, I knew that I wanted the court reporters and the secretaries to be my best friends. They're the backbone of industry. They've seen everything. They've seen everybody as lawyers. I didn't care if other lawyers spoke poorly of me, but if the court reporters were speaking well of me, then I knew I was doing terrific. And they're the people that you needed and the people that would support you. And it's the same with being a doctor. It's the nurses that are there that will make or break you. And it's the same, I imagine, in various other industry. And so be aware of that and treat people, even those you think may not be able to assist you in any way, with respect, because you never know whose opinion is going to be asked. And you'll be surprised even here with Claudia. Let's say you end up becoming a paralegal. It's possible the lawyer you try to get a job from knows Claudia and calls Claudia and says, have you ever heard of this person before? And you just never know. And so be very conscientious of that, because I think it's an important thing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for validating not only like their opinions and their experiences, but also for telling us your own, because I'm sure our society struggles with assuming. When someone doesn't look a certain way, they just assume, and I'm sure that's something that a lot of people struggle with. So thank you so much for sharing. I have another question for you. Mention one thing that did not help you, or a situation where being Latino did not help.
Well, I think we have, I won't say we, I have a loud mouth. And I think that I got that from my upbringing, and I speak my mind. And I think to Mira's point, I wouldn't say you run from it, but you have to become more conscientious of being surgical of when and where to use those assets, because I do think that they're assets, but they can quickly become vices if you're constantly behaving in the manner that you saw your parents behave, or communicating in the way that your community behaves. Because I mean, I can tell you a lot of white, or other, not even just white. I mean, there's many other peoples from many different places who, if I spoke to them, or sometimes I'll speak to them with candor, and they're kind of like, whoa, because they're not used to the way perhaps we are, where everybody butts into everybody's business and there's no real privacy, physical or otherwise, in terms of, and so you have to not unlearn that so much as recognize that other people have their expectations for space. And obviously this generation understands better than mine about those types of things, but but just try to know when to be strong and forthright, and when in the particular moment, like a famous saying of, choosing your hill to die on. Whether you're in HR or you're working in banking or as a prosecutor, you're going to come across 1,000 battles that you feel that you have to fight, or your principles and your integrity and all that's going to be shot. And that's not true. It's just in the moment, you're so wrapped up in your feelings, and you need to gain as much as you can some perspective. And I think, I get that at least from my Hispanic parents, is this: we have to go, the revolution's now. And so we don't stop and think, is this really the moment that I need to fight? Is this really, am I really going to be a sellout because I didn't take this particular hill to fight on? And so just try and pull back a little bit and think.
Thank you so much, and thank you for answering. That was actually a student question. Edmi Salazar, who is one of our participants and attendees, asked that question. So thank you so much for answering. Claudia, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, but I would like to say that I'm not a paralegal anymore. I don't know if Carlos missed that.
I'm sorry, I wasn't here for that. I just heard the paralegal education at Marymount.
That was my first. And then so I did what you recommended to the students, is to, you can change your career path later on. And so I was a paralegal first, and then but then I also had my parents would tell me, like, you're gonna need Spanish when you grow up. I'm like, no, I'm not. So they were right. And it has helped, because in Virginia, we don't have very many attorneys who are bilingual. And so that makes me valuable here.
Are you an attorney now then, Chloe?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because that's something I would say to the attendees watching. If you're a paralegal or a secretary to a lawyer, you realize very quickly how most lawyers are idiots, and you could easily be doing their job. So, that's something that I have no doubt Claudia saw. That she was like, I could be doing what they're doing.
Thank you guys so much for your participation. Thais, do you have anything to add on how sometimes being a Latino or part of the community hasn't been helpful?
No, I think you guys nailed it. Two things I want to bring back on, it's again on Claudia and Carlos' points about, asking, and you can be straightforward and ask for a salary, but also just asking for opportunities to grow your duties. And, if you're not comfortable necessarily going to ask for a higher salary, or if you want to set yourself up, ask to be part of a project. Like Claudia said, she had to ask, to be part of certain cases or litigations. Just ask. And even if they say you're not ready for it, can I watch you? Can I shadow you? Can I please come along with you? And that really opened the door for me, just not being afraid to ask. One thing that we had talked about, adding people on LinkedIn and creating that circle, but really anywhere that you are, you can probably find somebody that's in a better position than you, and you can go ask them what they do, but you can also use them as a mentor. I would say Carlos was talking about his professors, and I think Mira touched on that as well. Go talk to your professors. They could be your mentors. Any of us, really. Go find somebody on LinkedIn. They could be your mentors. Increasing that circle around you of people that you can trust, and you can ask for advice and be a soundboard, and we'll also give you tough advice and be like, no, you gotta, try something else. You can't, be a certain way about something, or, maybe that's not the way to do it. Let's look at other options. Having that so you can have a quote unquote a safety net, or like a practice round, is really helpful. So even if your parents aren't in the area that you're looking for, or you don't have any family members that have done that, go find somebody else. There's so many people in the world, and I'm sure they're happy to talk to you about it. People love talking about themselves. That's why we're all here. So find somebody that's willing to tell you what worked out for them and what didn't, and use them as a mentor.
Thank
If
you
I could,
so much for sharing.
If I could just say one other thing now that I know that Claudia's a lawyer, then I think the panelists, the males, when you get out there, you need to support your female colleagues. One thing that I saw as a prosecutor very quickly was that juries, potential jurors, the judges, the way they would treat the women was so radically different than the way they treated the men. And there were so many things that my female coworkers had to think of and to do. And that wasn't something I appreciated until I was in the workforce. And then as a male, you'll find yourself at times in positions where you can help your female colleagues in ways, or change the atmosphere of the room, or not let a judge get away with some sort of sexist comment or some sort of derogatory thing. And you need to take that upon yourself. And those are the moments that'll, you want to be integrity, you want to have integrity and all this other business. Those are the moments that are really defining, in my opinion, is when you actually try to help your female colleagues without any expectation for anything in return. Because they are, I think, at least within the legal profession, if they're litigating, dealing with a whole set of ridiculous secondary criteria on them that the male lawyers are not doing.
Thank you.
I would also add that women need to be nicer to each other. There's a lot of infighting between women. I have no idea why, but I've seen it, and it isn't healthy. We're not helping each other by doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just, sorry to interrupt you, but I want to say Claudia's 100% right. I saw a female judge just recently elected, but the two older female judges have completely ignored her, will not talk to her, don't want to involve her in any projects, because she doesn't fit the mold of what they see as like perhaps a respectable female judge or whatever. But I mean, it's just crazy to me, because when women are fighting in any profession, the only people it serves are men. I mean, at the end of the day, you're just like for each other, only furthers men having greater advantage in the workplace than yours, because men can dislike each other, but say we're both going to make money. Wonderful. I don't care. I hate you. I think you have a black soul, but I'm going to work with you to make this money. And so I do think that Claudia is absolutely 100% right on that. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And you all have had some very valid points that I'm sure will be very helpful. Mira, if you want to share your experience.
The question was if being Latino didn't help you at some point, right?
Yeah.
I think that if you're gonna think that way, you are gonna find reasons for being Latino not to be beneficial. So first, let's remove that idea that that being Latino is as a defect, because it's not. I think that one of the things that we really need to start doing is giving ourselves more value. The beautiful thing about being Latino is that it's not just one country. We have knowledge about so many cultures in South America, Central America, everywhere, right? So it's beautiful that we're rich in culture and we can bring so much to the table. And I don't think we should see it as at any point in time did it not help you. Now, the other thing that comes with being Latino is that we are very passionate and we wear our emotions on our sleeves. And sometimes that'll get us into trouble, yes, but it's not a bad thing because we're learning, right? It's about learning that emotional intelligence and using those emotions correctly versus destructively. And I think it's very important for us as Latinos to manage our emotions because it's not always easy. It's not. But in the workplace, you have to try. You really have to try because to Carlos's point, you never want to have someone say something bad about you because that reputation will follow you and you don't want that for your career at all. So definitely just try to work with what you have and also use it as a superpower. Like I said earlier, don't think of it as a defect. It's a superpower being Latino.
Thank you. As we approach the last 12 minutes of the conference, some students have asked questions, so there are 2 student questions that I have for you. Do you have any advice for anyone graduating without any jobs lined up? And in your experience, what industries or fields exist that could potentially hire or sponsor more international workers in the DMV area?
Well, I would say if you don't have a job prospect, I did, that happened to me when I moved. My husband got transitioned to New York for work. and I didn't have anything lined up when we moved there. So I found certain places that I just asked to shadow, and I volunteered and did, work for free. I volunteered at the legal aid. I did anything I could so that I could show on my resume that there wasn't a gap. But even if I had a gap, it was explainable, but I didn't have one. So that was good. I think you want to avoid having a gap. As far as like international students, I don't know. I would say IT field, but that's not my expertise.
Mira, do you have any answers?
Yes, that's right up my alley. So I graduated in 2009 with my undergrad degree, where it was the recession. I had no jobs lined up. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So my best advice for anyone that has that same issue is don't feel like the world is coming to an end, because it is not. It is very common. Not everyone has a job outside, right? Waiting right outside the door once you toss your, the one thing to keep in mind is get on search firms, put your resume on Career Builder, Indeed, so it's searchable by employers that are looking for entry-level positions. Get someone to help you with your resume. Anyone here that's interested, that has attended today, April, please feel free to share my email address. I'm more than happy to help them polish their resume, help them build it in any way that I can. As far as gaps, if you do not find a job within 3 months or a year, do not feel like it's going to hurt your resume. When there is this misconception that when someone hasn't been employed for a long time, they're not attractive candidates. But the thing is that life happens, and as long as you can explain that gap in your interview, that's not going to hurt you, because you could have been taking care of a sick family member, you could have been traveling the world to find peace or whatever it might be, and employers just see your resume as a photo, but they want to get context to you. So that's what interviews are going to help. As far as for the H-1B visas, the tech and the finance industries are the ones that really do sponsor those type of visas. So I would look into organizations that are in that industry.
Thank you.
I would just say a couple things. One is Mira's absolutely right about the resume, and I will hire people who don't know anything about the law if they're intelligent and not stupid. To me, if they can understand things and I can hold a conversation with them, that's half the battle. I mean, I've met lawyers and paralegals and others in the legal field that might be brilliant in whatever it is they claim they do, but they're morons. And if you're wasting my time, then I'm not being productive. And why am I paying you? I want to pay you because you're taking work off of my plate so that I can bring in more business. And so, not having the habit, I'll tell you, when I was a prosecutor for years, I litigated tons and tons of cases. When I decided I didn't want that anymore, I got job offers from all sorts of legal fields. I didn't know anything about those other legal fields. I told the lawyers, I don't know anything about this. They go, we don't care. You're great in the courtroom. You're a great litigator. You know how to talk to people. You're not a moron. We'll teach you the area of the law that you need to know. I'd rather have that than somebody who's brilliant in this area but doesn't know anything. And the other thing that Mira said that's important is this gap. Maybe Claudia had a different experience. She might have had a better support system with her husband, but law school is a miserable experience. I don't recommend any of you go to law school, but if you do, be prepared for that terrible, terrible journey. Not because it's difficult to get A's. It's just nothing like your undergraduate experience where it's collaborative and people are together. It's a vicious place of hate. But after I graduated, I went and worked on a ranch for a year because I didn't want anything to do with the law after I graduated. And I just was so zoned out. And after a year, I then said, okay, I'm going to give this a go and I'm going to try to be a lawyer, see if I like it. And when I met for job interviews, they were so thrilled that I'd been doing something else because they weren't interested in hearing about the law or what I knew or didn't know as a graduating lawyer. They were like, you don't know anything as a graduating lawyer. None of you do. And so they were excited to hear about what were you doing on the ranch? Oh, I can't wait to quit the law and go onto a ranch or this sort of thing. So Mira's absolutely right to that point that you can change the narrative of any situation. Where were you? I was in Honduras for a year. trying to survive the socioeconomic situation that's ongoing there, which I think makes me fully capable of whatever challenge you put in front of me. Like, that sounds better than I didn't have anything to do for a year. I was just hanging out at home making arroz con pollo, you know.
Thank you so much. And as you guys mentioned, and Mira Vasquez mentioned in the chat, attending career fairs, especially at Marymount for the students, is very important to create your network. So, and we are actually hosting some career fairs this month in October. So if you guys want more information, please email us. And also about the resumes, the Center for Career Development specializes in helping students build their resume. So if you guys need any help for the students, please schedule your appointment and email us at cservice@marymount.edu. Sorry. And yeah, guys, do you have any answers that you would like to give?
Yeah, so I was a F1 student, and that's why I ran into so many issues trying to get an internship, is because, you know, the assumption is that you need a firm that's going to sponsor you, and you need a large firm that has done so before. And yeah, that does make things easier, but that was not my experience. I went into a company that never heard of a H-1B or an F1, as a matter of fact, or an OPT. And they were willing to work it with you. So I think, you know, meeting, you know, or providing your worth, as Carlos mentioned, you know, companies are looking for people that are going to make their lives easier. So showing them your worth does make people, you know, willing to do things for you. And so that was the case. They learned how to figure out the H-1B process. We weren't picked on the first time in the lottery, you know. And so we had to do it again. I went back to school for graduate school, and, you know, second time was the charm, but it's not giving up. I think that you're going to be faced with adversaries and just issues. It's going to be a little harder than your counterparts that are born in the States. But don't give up. One thing that they talked about, or panels here, Carlos, Claudia, and Mira talked about was, you know, it's fine that you don't have a job right out of school. One thing that I want to encourage you is it's okay that you don't have a job. Go find something to keep you busy, whether it's a ranch or something. So that way you are building skills, whether it is, you know, business skills or it's soft skills. So you're still working on yourself. But once you find something that you're happy with, don't be comfortable. That's the worst thing that you can do, is come in and be like, I'm good. I found what I want to do. And some people, that's fine, but, you know, continue to learn. Even if you're not looking to advance in your career, don't stop learning. Continue to read, continue to figure out what's new and out there. Or, you know, if you want a promotion, you know, don't be afraid to try different things and to try to push for that. The other thing that we're talking about is applying for jobs. I do a lot of hiring now, and I didn't know that when I was, you know, looking for jobs. But you don't have to fit all the boxes. Half the time when I'm finding through resumes, and yes, it's sometimes a little bit upsetting that you're looking for a certain skill and there's people applying that don't have it. But for the past couple of times, I've hired people that don't fit all the boxes, and it's based on their skills because I think I can teach them, and they've turned out great, you know. So it's all about your attitude and your willingness to learn. And just because you don't fit all the boxes doesn't mean you won't be a great candidate for that position.
And interview skills is very important. We just hired someone that when we first presented the resume, the hiring manager was like, no, I don't want to interview this person. We were like, but they really do have good potential. Talk to this person. And we ended up hiring them. After they met them in the interview, they're like, wow, we're blown away. So definitely polish up that resume and definitely look at how to improve your interview skills, because that's very important. And then you'll get your foot in through the door.
And to what they both said, don't discount yourself. I have many friends and others who won't apply somewhere because they don't think they fit all the boxes. And you will never know whether, you know, they may not have even seen anybody that's remotely close to the boxes they put out there. And so don't shoot yourself and do the work of the world trying to push you down for yourself. You lose absolutely nothing by applying. Same thing with the graduate programs. Don't think, well, there's so many more brilliant students out there in the world. Just give it a go. If you lose out or you get denied, what's the worst thing? What is the worst thing that's going to happen to you? Nothing.
I agree with that. I wasn't sure if I would get into law school. I wasn't sure about a lot of those things. So yeah, I did that. And also those job descriptions, they have a list of everything you want, or at least I can count on, on one hand, all the jobs that I got that I didn't have all the things that they were asking for on the list. So don't let that hold you back, because if not, you've already told yourself no before they told you no.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. And thank you for all of your responses and for being a part of this panel. I really, really enjoyed being the moderator, and I enjoyed all of your answers. So thank you so much. As a final reminder, I just wanted to remind our students of our Fall 2021 Networking and Opportunity Fairs. This can help you guys with job, internships, and volunteer experiences. So our first fair is for nonprofit and service, is September 22nd. And our business and technology fair is October 4th. And our creative fair is October 25th. And now I would like to give Ana Sofia the space to talk. And yeah, Ana Sofia.
Hi, everyone. I first want to thank our amazing panelists. We learned so much as a Latina woman myself. It's always just really inspiring to hear about everyone's different experiences, our diverse backgrounds, and the different fields that we are making a difference in just by being present, and all the work that you all are doing. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with our Marymount students, with our Marymount community, and with each other too. So I just wanted to send another reminder first. Happy Hispanic Heritage Month. This is the beginning of Hispanic Heritage Month. As a Hispanic serving institution, a proud Hispanic serving institution, we have a lot of events coming up. So please make sure, students, that you are following Avanzamos on Engage. And for anyone, students, alumni, faculty, staff who are watching, if you have an Instagram, MU Avanzamos is our Instagram, where we post about events that are happening and all sorts of good stuff happening at the university. So please make sure to follow. We have some really wonderful events coming up, including another talk with an alumni tomorrow in the biology field, bioengineering field. So please make sure to attend, and I will hand this back to Avril or Emily. I don't know who is wrapping us up, but thank you again.
Thank you, guys. So I just wanted to remind also, like plugging a little bit, I just wanted to plug in our Instagram. So it's MU Saints Career. If you guys would like to follow us, that would be great. And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to all our panelists. Thank you for just participating and giving us a little bit of your answers and your thoughts. I really appreciated it. I'm sure many other students appreciated it. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great
Thank you
job,
for
April.
hosting.
Thank you. We're officially done. So you guys can log out now.
All right. Have a good evening.